I'm Brandon Smith, and I'm the workplace therapist. My entire purpose and passion in life is one singular thing, and that's to help you live a life free from dysfunction. And let's be honest, folks, dysfunction is everywhere. Our bosses, our coworkers, our neighbors, even that grumpy barista that pours your coffee. And sometimes, that dysfunction stares back at us in the face when we're getting ready in the mornings and we see ourselves in the mirror. Well, at the end of the day, life and work should not have to suck. The purpose of this show is to help you overcome those roadblocks in your life to help you realize the life you've always wanted. This is the Brandon Smith Show. I am your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of this show is one singular thing, and that is to help you live a life that much more free from dysfunction. And so this week marks one of our leadership therapy weeks, where we typically take on a topic, and Whitney and I jam on that. Hey, Whitney.
What's happening, Brandon?
I'm glad you don't have chips today.
I don't. It was hard to make it through that intro without laughing, though.
Yeah, really? You just laugh at me? Just see me and laugh at me? I don't know what this is.
That shirt's pretty outrageous.
This is my Highway of Awesomeness shirt. Highway of Awesomeness. You just gave me shade. You threw shade at my shirt. So normally we take on the topic and then we take a question from a listener. But our question today from a listener is so relevant to the topic, I think we got to flip it, Whitney.
We're flipping it.
Okay, so bear with us. I know I haven't given you the topic yet, but I promise if you stay tuned, you're going to see where this is going real quick. All right, Whitney.
So this question came out of the show that you and Jody Charlip discussed, the production trap. Mm-hmm. So this was a comment from a listener from that show. So listener inspired. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. She said it was a very interesting topic, and it got her thinking about how the production trap can impact a successful retirement. She says, I believe that my value is based on being busy, helping others, solving problems, getting involved in a myriad of projects. How do I successfully back away from that mindset in retirement? So she's saying, if my value is found in this, but I'm retired, how do I back away from that mindset, get a new mindset? It's like I need to do all these things to be happy, yet much of that I've let go of. I wanted to expand the notion that this trap impacts more than just our work life, but retirement life as well. Yeah,
so it begs this is why I wanted to set this up first, because we're going to talk about retirement life. We're going to talk about how when you're no longer working, how you can lose your sense of identity and how you redefine that and how purpose can help with that. But it's not just retirement. There are other seasons and stages of our life where we may take a step back from work because we have family commitments, or we may decide we want to take a full step all the way out of work because we want to spend time raising a family. And it can be very difficult if we're used to getting our worth and value from what we do and accomplish, because the thing about work is it's measurable to a certain degree.
True.
You can measure what you get accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
You get paid a certain amount of money. I mean, there's metrics, no matter what we do, whether we're working for a nonprofit, for-profit, doesn't matter. There's metrics.
And other people telling you what a great job
and other
you're
people,
doing.
you get that validation. Mm-hmm. So when you walk into environments where you don't have that clear plan or clear way of measuring your output, it can really cause some internal identity struggles. So what's it all worth? What do I have value? Which I think is what the listener is really begging, that
mm-hmm.
question.
Mm-hmm.
When I go into seasons of my life where I don't necessarily have worth or value, it can be challenging to measure that. So I would say a good starting place is purpose. And she alluded to that. She said, well, what about purpose and the role purpose plays in that? And so one of my favorite people I love to quote is a guy by the name of Viktor Frankel. And we've talked about Viktor before on the show,
mm-hmm.
Famous psychologist, started existential psychology. He was a Jewish physician in Austria during World War II, and he and his family were taken into concentration camps. And during that time, his entire family was killed. Viktor was the only one who survived. And when he came out on the other end, he defined existential psychology as a way to kind of get through difficult times. And he said, you can find meaning in life in one of three ways. And so this is really important to our broader question here, whether it's retirement, whether it's staying home to raise a family, whether it's doing something else that's non-work related. How do I define meaning? He said you can find it in 3 ways. So listen close. Okay. Ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to quiz you on the 3.
Okay.
I just came up with that, but I can't wait. Here we go. First one. By doing a work or doing a deed, by our work or deed. So our job can give us meaning and purpose.
So what we do.
What we do.
Okay.
Okay. So that can be one way. Now you can mix and match these. They're not mutually exclusive. You can mix and match them. The second one is by the people we encounter in our lives. So in other words, the relationships we have. So our relationship as a friend or a brother or sister or husband or wife or mother or daughter or mentor or manager, our relationships can give us meaning and purpose. And the third one is the attitude we take towards unavoidable suffering, is what Viktor Frankl says. That's kind of a heavy way of saying, like, when things are difficult or dark, how do you look at that? Mm-hmm. So that can be everything from kind of having a glass half full attitude to your own spiritual faith and how your own spiritual journey can provide you meaning in life.
That last one is particularly interesting, and how it ties in with Victor's story because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember him saying too that in the concentration camps, if one person knew that another family member was still alive, then they would continue living. But as soon as they had heard that their other family members had passed, it was within a day that they would pass.
Oh, yeah.
So they felt like they lost their purpose.
They lost that sense of
So that was
hope.
their driving force. But if they lost, if they heard word got around in the concentration camp, so-and-so had died, it was a matter of day before they would die.
Absolutely.
Too.
So that lose that sense of hope, that sense of purpose, that meaning, like what's it all worth? Mm-hmm. And it can really tie into almost all 3 of those, right? There's no work or deed they were doing that was giving them a sense of purpose. Their relationships with others, which they were holding on to, was gone. Mm-hmm. And then they just didn't have any way to reframe that unavoidable suffering. Mm-hmm. So they just gave up. So in absence of these 3, life looks pretty bleak. But any of those 3 can provide us meaning and purpose when things are fuzzy. So we go into retirement where we don't really have a title anymore. We don't have a set role anymore. We don't have a syllabus anymore. This also ties into even people who, I have known many people in my life, you may have known people in your life too, who are really, really good at school. And as soon as the syllabus was stripped away, they just couldn't do it because they didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's the same general idea. When it's really clearly structured, we know our role, we know our identity, it's really easy. What happens when that's gone? It's left to us to define it. So you can use that framework to think a little bit about, okay, so it's now retirement, and that's a different kind of animal. Like, how do I rethink this, and how do I examine this, and kind of come up with a sense of purpose for that? So what I would say to our listener is, I would say the first step in this would be to say, okay, so what I want my sense of purpose to be? How could I redefine that? And what I've learned over life, so I used to believe that you had one sense of purpose kind of deep in you, and your job was to find it. And I don't necessarily believe that's inaccurate. I think some people can have a lifelong purpose that they carry through their entire life. But I think what I've come to learn and realize is that people can have different purposes at different seasons of life. Mm. So one season, your purpose may be this, mm-hmm. and then it may evolve. So what I love about situations like retirement is you're in an inflection point for your life. It's a transformation point. You can define a whole new sense of purpose. So look for those needs in the world you want to touch. And it's retirement, so it doesn't need to be all-consuming. You want to make sure you're spending time for yourself.
So what does that look like? Is that a part-time job? Is that a hobby?
Well, I would say if we're talking about finding needs in the world, mm-hmm. I think then one of my favorite questions to ask is, who do you want your customers to be? Who do you want to help or serve? So finding a group or population or cause that you feel particularly connected to. So that may be, folks that are in assisted living homes, mm-hmm. or it may be, children that are in preschool, or it may be homeless, or maybe Humane Society, or maybe something like that. And then, once you figure out that need that you feel connected to, decide, Yeah, I want to dedicate some time. And the cool thing about retirement is you're not doing it to get money. I mean, you can if you want, but you've retired. So in theory, you should have enough money to be able to do these things on a more volunteer basis.
Right. Just for sheer enjoyment.
Just for sheer enjoyment.
Others.
And remember, you're a volunteer, so you can do as much or as little as you want. You can do 4 hours a week. And I know volunteers that do that and get very, very passionate about that. But I think that's an important part to that too, is to do it right. I would set some boundaries on it. You keep a good, healthy balance, because retirement is supposed to be about enjoying your that season, those golden years they call it. So put balance and context around that, because I think that's important. I have seen people who are in retirement overcommit, overextend, burn themselves out, and treat it like it's a job when it's not. They should just basically treat it as what it is, something that they're passionate about.
Wow. Yeah, because it can reverse on you, and you basically just gotten yourself another job.
Yeah.
Wow.
And don't let guilt drive you. This is more about finding that need.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's important. So I would have her start there, but also make a list. So in addition to making that, identify the needs in the world that she's connected to, also make a list of, and anyone listening to this at any stage of life can do these questions.
Okay.
Also make a list of what are the things that recharge my battery. What are some things that keep me excited? And that's going to be hobbies, and there's going to be maybe vacations, places she's always wanted to go, and really weight those properly for where you're at in life. So if you're in kind of middle career or early career, and you've got a young family, it's probably going to be closer to, 90% work, 10% fun stuff, maybe even less. But in this case, when you're retirement, really set good bounds and say, no, I want to spend 60 to 70% of my time over here, going to places I haven't been to, planning trips, doing stuff that's just fun, learning a new thing. When we had my colleague Rick Gilkey on here, and he talked about the importance of always learning and growing. So making sure that you're doing that. And then using kind of something that gives you some sense of purpose or giving back or meaning as maybe a good kind of 30 or 40%. Something like that. I just made that up.
I like it.
But that seems to, I think, work. When I've seen people do it well, that seems to be the balance that they do.
Is there a time in retirement or transition where maybe we're not doing enough?
Say more about that.
Well, I'm thinking, you hear a lot about, especially children get concerned about their parents when they retire, because especially if you have a parent that's used to working and being involved with things, and then they retire and maybe they're not active enough. What does that look like? Or what's a healthy balance there to kind of remedy that?
Okay. So here's what I want to do.
Okay.
We're going to take a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, I'm going to talk to you about the Blue Zones Project.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about what it discovered about people that live to 100 years and older, and how that can relate to this. Because it'll answer your question, but it's going to give us even more things that we can put in place at any point in our life right now. Okay. And then I don't want to miss that other population we haven't talked about. Those individuals that decide to take some time off from the workforce to spend some time with their family. And what can they be doing in that season to still feel like they've got a sense of meaning and purpose?
I think I may have another question to add on to that.
Oh, really?
Too, on the second part.
We have to do another show.
I've got a first part and a half part question.
Isaac's going to have to rein us in.
Good luck.
So I know there's no reining the show in. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. When we come back, I want to share with you the research done from the Blue Zones Project. Fascinating research on how to live a very long and healthy life. So stay tuned.
Job plus the right culture plus the right boss equals workplace happiness. The number one reason people leave jobs is problems with their boss. A horrible boss can make us dread every Monday, but an amazing boss can make us so excited to work that we'd go in on weekends. Finding your perfect boss is not only possible, it's one of the most impactful steps you can take in crafting your perfect career. Visit theworkplacetherapist.com and click on guides to learn how to find and get your perfect boss, whether that means making the decision to move on or turning your current boss into the perfect leader you want them to be. Our bosses have so much influence over our work and our whole day. Working for the right boss alone can be a winning career strategy.
Welcome back from break. This is the Brandon Smith Show, and I'm your host, Brandon Smith. And today we have been talking about different seasons of our life when we're not working, but how do you still find meaning and purpose that work can bring us? So Whitney offered up a great question from a listener. We're talking about retirement and how to find meaning and purpose in that. And right before the break, I teed up that I was going to share with you some research from what's called the Blue Zones Project. So Whitney, have you ever heard of the Blue Zones Project before?
I have not.
You've not?
I think I know where you're going with this, though.
Oh, do you? Okay. It's Blue Zones Project. Super cool.
Okay.
So this was 4 or 5 years ago. A group of researchers set out to answer this question: where in the world is there the largest concentration of centenarians? Okay, centenarians. So you have to say centenarians 3 times fast.
Mm-hmm.
Isaac is doing it. You're not doing it?
That was a good job. Did you hear? I said it so fast.
Centenarians. So centenarians are people over 100 years old. And so they said, all right, well, let's just see, where are they? So they went out and they went all over the globe and they found little pockets. So there's Okinawa, Japan, Ikaria, Greece, Nicoya, Costa Rica, little town in, I think it's Loma Linda, California. So little pockets all over the world. No correlation to first world economies, no correlation to first world healthcare. So some had all that stuff, some not so much. And so then that begged the next question. Well, what's going on in these little villages and towns that are making all these 100-year-old people? So you're going in these villages and there's 100-year-old people who are walking around, riding bikes and stuff. It's just kind of odd. So when they studied what was going on, they found there was a few factors. One, diet was important. Mm-hmm. So they found very leafy green diets with lean meats, a lot of omega-3s, so diet matters. So that matters. Second, they had a kind of regular movement, natural movement every day. So that doesn't necessarily mean going to the gym. Not to say going to the gym is bad. Of course, we know that's good. But in most of the cases, these were people that were either walking, almost all these had hilly terrains. So people were walking up and down hills, sometimes to get water, literally, or riding bikes. So natural movement every day. Then they had a sense of community. Often these were faith-based communities, but a tight-knit community where people were connected. So you teed up this question earlier, what about not being active? Mm-hmm. When I hear active, I immediately thought of the natural movement, but I also thought of isolation, like not being connected to other people. And there's a piece of research that just came out this past week talking about how loneliness has now surpassed anything else as the number one killer of people over 65 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it's getting worse because of technology. More and more people are feeling disconnected. Mm-hmm. So we find, again, these 100-year-old folks, they've got great diets, they're moving regularly, they're really connected to people in their community and around them, family, friends, faith. And then lastly, sense of purpose. All of them had some sense of purpose. So they had a sense of, so the grandma who's in Costa Rica, she's hand rolling tortillas and she's 103 years old and she's doing it because that's her job. Mm-hmm. She does that. And it might be because she doesn't like the way anyone else hand rolls the tortillas. But that's still her sense of purpose. Right. So it's redefining a little bit about what that means for you. But I think all these are important elements in our life to give us that healthiness. Now, there was another bonus, and almost all these communities drank wine at 5. So they would have a glass or two of typically red wine. It was another kind of element to it. So you can throw that in there as bonus. It's not all.
Is there chocolate anywhere in there?
You could probably work in a little chocolate.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I think that's a really good, interesting starting place for us. So when you're thinking about retirement, how do you redefine purpose for you? But making sure you're doing the other things. You're getting involved with people around you. That's really, really important. They're finding that's huge. And that's, again, that studying loneliness is really being a high correlator to death. You look like you have a question.
I do. Can I throw you on another curveball, another tangent?
Yes, you always do.
Does this have anything to do...
Isaac was snickering.
Whatever.
By the way, folks, she called me 98 years old during the break. I think that's rude.
I just said
I'm not quite 100
you would
yet.
know what it would be like to be a centurion.
And then she said, at least I still have my hair. And then she looked at my, I do, but then she didn't. She looked at it like whatever's left of it. It wasn't very. Question.
Tell me what this has, because I feel like there's a correlation too between the generations. So like, say my father and my father's father, we didn't have all this technology stuff. It was, I don't know. I just feel like the times were different, right? Like it was more, you saw more, it was more acceptable, or maybe we just saw it more that the dad would come live with his family when he got old. And, we used to not put people in retirement homes and nursing homes and things like that. And then we used to have, everyone came together over dinner at the dinner table, and it just feels like there was more connection. I feel like there's got to be something there too.
I would agree with you. I think that's true. So another important point when we're talking about retirement, this idea of retirement is a made-up thing. It's a new thing.
True.
This does not exist in humankind. This is not how it worked. This is a new concept created this century that particularly in the Western world, that we're trying to figure out. So yeah. And then so I even know, it's not uncommon even with my dad and people around him, they retire and they say, well, then we have to move to Florida and we go golfing because that's what you do. Because there's not a real good sense of what do we do in that space. It's really kind of left up to us to figure out. There's no syllabus, and that's hard when there's no syllabus. You got to kind of figure it out, find what works for you. But you're right. Today, now, it's more common. You put people in retirement homes. They don't move in with you. And that's in this country and culture, that's more common. Now, you go to other countries and cultures, where there could be South America or Latin America or Asia, and you're going to not see that. Then the family moves in, and that's how that works. And they play a role. They continue to help with the household chores or raising the children or cooking meals, and they're not just sitting on a chair. So I do think in some ways bringing people back into the family, while it may seem like a burden, it can also form a source of purpose for those individuals.
I think we have something to learn from other cultures.
I would agree. A good mentor of mine would say we all hold a piece of the truth. And I think that's really true. We all hold a piece of the truth. There's stuff that every culture does really right. And there's stuff that every culture does really wrong. And you got to figure out where the truth is and take that and pass on the rest.
I like this. Okay.
Okay, so we
were talking about transitions.
Yeah, we talked about transitions. We talked about retirement a bunch. So I would be doing this a disservice if we didn't also extend it to, and some of the same points will be true, but talk to those individuals that decide, hey, it's time, I want to start a family, and I really want to take a step back from work and really spend time with my family as they're younger. So that could be women, it could be men, taking that step out of the workplace. This can be challenging for both men and women in different ways, because how do you see your value and worth? And frankly, just to be very blunt, as a society, we have undervalued that role in recent years. We don't treat someone who's a stay-at-home parent as equal value as someone who is working in the workplace. And we will undervalue her and him. And for men, since it's a new thing, it's totally it's a strange thing people don't understand. And for women, they will come, and I hear them regularly say, I'm not treated as valuable by other women that are working. They'll tend to undervalue me. How do I measure that? And so it can be very challenging, because that's a very hard role to be in. It's very tiring and exhausting. And the only fruits of your labor are getting occasionally thrown up on at 3 a.m. And that's not easy. But I think it's important where this fits in, what we can learn from even blue zones, is that there's a couple of things that can help during that time. One, remind yourself your sense of purpose, what you're doing here. Because parenting is one of the greatest vocations anyone can take on, because you are raising another human being, and you're really creating a legacy that will eventually nurture and make the world a better place. And that's a really profound thing. But it's a really hard thing, too.
Is there something we can do to prepare to do that? Like, no, nothing? Not
Look,
about the
you're-
having children. I know you can't prepare for that, but stepping out of one role into another.
Nope. Nothing you can do.
that's
Both
tough.
of those things, you have to kind of figure it out on your own.
Yeah. Wow.
But I do think the thing you can do is constantly remind yourself of the value of that job. Because you have to really, this is really, really important. I'm not a big proponent of the noise in our culture right now, both within the United States, Western culture, and in the globe. The noise is not good. It doesn't tell you the right things to hear. So for example, the role of a parent, it gets undervalued. And so you see a lot of people, they just outsource it. Hey, it's outsourced parenting. You can't outsource parenting, folks.
Yeah.
It can't be done well. I've never seen a case where it's been done well. I'm sorry to say. I've never seen a case where it's been done well. And so to really do that right, you have to step into that role fully. But when people aren't valuing it, how do you find value? You used to be a director and you made this amount of money, and now all of a sudden you're not. So you have to find people that are going to reinforce that. And remind yourself, you're raising human beings, which is an amazing gift. And you're going to create the next generation of people to make the world better. That is so awesome. And it's a really hard thing, but it's a really important thing and a worthy thing. And that, you see, you get me a little fired up on the parenting thing. Because parenting really is about, it's about character. You're trying to raise these people and develop really good character. And what makes that also very difficult is character cannot be measured well. Okay, so for example, I can take my 3-year-old and say, I want her to be an Olympic athlete. And then I can measure her time and how she swims. But if I say, I want her to be a responsible adult, that's difficult to measure. I want her to be caring and empathetic. How do you measure that? But at the end of the day, if she's a great swimmer, that's not going to last.
Right.
But responsibility, caring, empathy, those will. That's what makes parenting also very hard. The things that really make a good parent are very difficult to measure. So you need that sense of purpose, and then going back to Blue Zones, you need to have a community that's going to help you reinforce that. And that can be your family, it can be your friends, it could be your faith-based community, just like in Blue Zones. But you need something that's going to help reinforce the value of what you're trying to do. Because our culture, the cultural context in which we live today, does not value it in the proper way it should. So that's a side note, but it's an important one, because I find people struggle at all those different seasons of their life when they step out of something that's easy to measure, whether it's retirement or becoming a full-time parent, and they say, how do I measure or find worth in this? It's really hard.
I have so many more questions. We'll have to get to it later.
Okay.
You know what? I like this, though. It's amazing listening to your various podcasts, how so many of your points tie together. That if you have a purpose, if you have courage, if you have faith, it really...
You were listening.
Was.
She was listening, folks.
Pat on the back. But it's true, all of those things, that's been a common theme in our discussion, is having that North Star that guides you. And even though the North Star may change, you still need something to guide you along your way. That seems to play into so many of the topics we've discussed.
Yeah, it does. And I'd want to give everyone listening a tremendous amount of grace in that to find those 3 jewels, purpose, courage, and faith, they're very rare. So everyone can get them. They're completely democratized. No one is excluded from those 3. Doesn't matter. Your background doesn't matter anything. Anyone can get them. But that doesn't mean they're easy to acquire. But the journey to discover them is noble and worthy. So I think we're done today. I think we've cured lots of problems. We got solution for retirement.
I'm feeling encouraged.
Are you? Yeah, well, I'm too. So all right. So this is the part that gets me nervous, Whitney.
As
I
it should.
have to close the show. I'm going to make you close the show next time. That's what I'm going to do. Whitney's going to close the show next time. Isaac liked that idea. So stay tuned. Continue to follow us on social media, Twitter at the WP Therapist, and of course on Facebook. Every Tuesday, 9 a.m., we have a new episode on Facebook Live. And you can catch that at facebook.com/Brandon Smith, WPT, for Workplace Therapist. Continue the fight against dysfunction, whether it's at home or at work. Our life should not have to suck. It should be noble and worthy and full of fulfillment. So until next week, have an awesome week and an awesome life.